Because this is a free market and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
No one will run for Congress because you have no way to better yourself.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another installment of House Money. Today we're going to cover a topic that I've been meaning to cover for a while, and this is why we should allow lawmakers to trade stocks. Now, before you decide to skip this video or hit unsubscribe, I want to ask you a question. Do you really think that this behavior is going to go away? Do you really think that politicians will stop trying to use the power of their office for personal or financial gain? You have to ask yourself that question. If you're a realist like me, then you're probably thinking the answer is no. And then you would have to ask yourself, would you rather know what members of Congress are trading or investing in, or would you rather be left in the dark? And I think the answer there is quite simple. Like I said in my first video, though, I'm not an apologist for Congress. I'm not condoning or condemning their behavior. Originally, we called this channel Presented Without Comment because I tried to show that I'm going to try to remove all political biases from this. And I'm a realist. I'm a firm believer that more knowledge is always better, that knowledge is power. We should know what people are trading. And I include this line in our intro as a joke, but there's a little truth to it. Like, if you can't beat them, join them. I would rather know what they're trading and perhaps maybe even get some stock ideas when I review their trades. So today we're going to cover the most popular bill that's been put forth by Senators Elizabeth Warren and Steve Daines, who's a Republican from Montana. So this is the first bipartisan congressional stock ban that we've seen, discussed in public discourse. And it seems to have more legs than the other bills that have been put forth by other senators. So let's get started. So this is straight from Elizabeth Warren's website. These are bills and legislation that she's either sponsored or co-sponsored. So this is S3631. You could look it up. A bill to prohibit stock trading and ownership by members of Congress and spouses of members of Congress, and for other purposes. And here's a little clip from Elizabeth Warren where we could actually hear what she has to say.
It says, so this bill is really straightforward. It says if you're a member of Congress or the spouse of a member of Congress, you cannot own individual stocks, you cannot buy individual stocks, you cannot trade in individual stocks. Now, here's the good news. It's simple, it's direct, and it's bipartisan. It is
simple, direct, and bipartisan. Well, let's see how simple it really is. If we actually go to congress.gov, you can type in that bill that Elizabeth Warren has up on her website. We can start to see a few sections of this bill. So let's start doing a breakdown of this bill. First section over here, we see definitions of everything. Commodity, diversified. These are all just definitions for the various adjectives or traits that they use to describe what people are allowed to own, aren't allowed to own, the circumstances they're allowed to own it under, etc. One thing that they don't define here is the term conflict of interest. They do not define that. Now remember that because we'll come back to that. Next, let's discuss implementation of this bill. So what is the implementation actually going to look like? This members of Congress and their spouses shall complete the divestment of any asset described in paragraph 1 by not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this act. So this bill, from the day it is enacted, there's a clock that starts 180 days. You have to sell all of your marketable securities, anything stocks, and then for certain assets, so they describe these as an interest in a hedge fund, a venture capital fund, or other privately held complex investment vehicle, an individual who is a member of Congress on the date of the act or spouse of a member of such an individual shall complete the divestment of the asset by not later than 5 years after the date of enactment of this act. So that's a pretty nice little window right there, but I don't blame them. Stocks, publicly traded securities, they have a liquidity premium. We all know that. They're very easy to liquidate on the spot. Private investments are a bit harder, and they're addressing that. They're giving them a 5-year window to sell off those privately held assets. So that seems kind of reasonable. So this next section we're going to cover is about exceptions. So what are exceptions? Nothing in this section shall be construed to prevent a member of Congress or spouse from owning or trading a widely held investment fund if the widely held investment fund does not present a conflict of interest and is diversified. So they give us a definition for diversified up above, but they don't ever define conflict of interest. So we don't know what that means. What's considered a conflict of interest? Am I allowed to own financial services ETF, let's say, something that has a basket of financial services stocks inside of it? If I'm on financial services regulatory committee? I don't know. This bill doesn't really seem to address it. They just throw out the word conflict of interest without giving us any sort of concrete definition. So let's continue. So up next, let's discuss the penalties for failure to disclose. And let's just go ahead and skip to the good parts here. So such member of Congress or spouse shall be subject to a civil penalty of not more than $50,000 for each violation. The imposition of a civil penalty under this subsection does not preclude any other criminal or civil statutory common law or administrative remedy which is available by law to the United States or any other person. So $50,000 each time you fail to disclose a purchase of such security. And so the rest of this bill seems pretty standard, but there are a few things that the New York Post of all publications actually covers, which we'll want to go through, that aren't mentioned in this bill. Let's read. Elizabeth Warren's bipartisan bill banning stock trading on Capitol Hill has a little notice provision that could save lawmakers millions of dollars worth of capital gains taxes, and Nancy Pelosi is signaling she likes it. On the face of it, the forthcoming ban on congressional stock ownership from Warren and Steve Daines would be the most stringent proposed crackdown on stock trading to date. It wouldn't just ban members of Congress and their spouses from trading stocks and require them to put their assets in a blind trust, like another popular Democratic proposal. It would also require them to sell off their individual stock holdings altogether. Nevertheless, according to a less notice provision in the bill, lawmakers who convert their stocks would also receive a massive sweetener. They would be able to convert their stocks into broad-based investment funds or treasury bonds while deferring any capital gains until they sell off the new assets. And if they die before selling the assets, the taxes would be waived altogether. Voila. So this bill that Elizabeth Warren we saw in that clip, she says is so simple. Apparently, and again, this is the New York Post, none of this was actually in the language of the bill that I saw. According to them, they're saying that lawmakers would be forced to sell the stock, not have to pay any capital gains on that sale, take that money, put it into a new asset, and then only have to pay capital gains taxes once they sell that new asset. So it's almost, if you know real estate a little bit, it's almost kind of like a 1031 exchange, but for stock. I don't know what to think of this. That is a pretty sweet deal, especially for some of the older members of Congress and Senate. I think the average age of the House is 63. I read that somewhere. And especially for the ones who are octogenarians like Nancy Pelosi. I'm not an ageist. When you're that old, something like that, that's very appealing. To almost never, you're almost never going to bear the tax consequences of any of these trades. So let's keep reading, see if there's anything else interesting. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who previously dismissed concern about stock trading by members of Congress but made a dramatic about-face in February when she said she was open to a ban, could save millions of dollars from the Warren-Daines capital gains exemption since her husband frequently trades shares of big tech companies. During a press conference last week, Pelosi was quick to point out that a similar capital gains deferral exists for the executive branch, where officials are already banned from owning individual stocks. So we're not going to go any further. I'm actually going to go and link this article in the description below for this video. So in conclusion, I just wanted to summarize my general take is that I would rather allow them to trade and then just have it be public information. If anything, I think that we should step up the disclosure requirements that we currently have. Right now, under the Stock Act, members have up to 45 days to disclose a trade. I think it should be 48 hours. I think it should be maybe even 24 hours if we have the technology to do it. So let me know what you guys think. I'm just trying to put out my contrarian viewpoint out there for the audience, see if anyone else agrees with me, or if you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments, tell me why you disagree, and that's it. That's today's episode of House Money. I'm hoping to make a part 2 where I also cover the other proposed stock trading ban from John Ossoff and I believe Mark Kelly. That one is slightly different, but it's also the same. And I think all of these are just political posturing. It's a great way to score political points, regardless of which party it comes from or which senators or Congress members are involved in it. But at the end of the day, it's just very entertaining political theater for all of us to watch. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments and share with a friend if you haven't already. And until next time.